Hello, everybody. Welcome back to 100 Days of EDH. Today is day number 83, and we're going to talk about Saviors of Kamigawa. Now, Saviors came out in June of 2005 and was the third and final set in the Kamigawa block, sandwiched in between the Mirrodin block and the Ravnica block. Saviors, because they work so far ahead, Saviors was kind of the first place where they could react to the problems that happened in Mirrodin. So we'll see a little bit of that. Let's get to it. Ether Shockwave, the 4 mana instant. Choose one, you tap all spirits or tap all non spirit creatures. Now, this is not, how shall we say, epic, unless you are running a spirit deck. Now, I guess we could totally run this as just a white tap all creatures card. I mean, because, most of the time spirits are, unless somebody's intentionally running that tribe, they're not real common. But if we're doing that, there are other cards cheaper to do it with. But if that's the crux of the deck, is to just tap out all everybody's creatures, you might want as many redundant copies of it as possible. So this could help that cause. Celestial Kirin. 4 mana, 3/3 legendary Kirin Spirit. Of course, it flies. You play a Spirit or Arcane spell, destroy all permanents with that spell's converted mana cost. Now, I don't think I've actually built Celestial Kirin, but I tell you when I do, I won't be including any 4-drop Arcane or Spirit spells, because I don't want to, accidentally kill my own commander. So, I don't know. So because of that, I think I may need more removal than normal, because 4-drop is a pretty important spot for EDH. Charge across the Araba. Now, this set gave us sweep. Each color had a couple of cards in it, but this is the one that I used the most. Absolutely insane. So for 5 mana, sweep, you can return any number of planes you control. This is white, so it's plains. The other colors, they would, if it was red, it would mountains or what have you. But creatures you control get +1/+1 for each planes return this way. This is an excellent finishing spell for an alpha strike when you just need, your team to get a couple of more pluses and you're there. It is an instant, and it's arcane, so it helps in those style decks. Enduring Ideal. Epic was another thing that this set gave us. Each color got 1 epic spell. They're all really expensive for what they do, but they do a thing. Search your library for an enchantment and put it into play, and then shuffle your library. And it has the epic ability, which pretty much means you can't play any more spells. Now you can activate abilities. There are a lot of cards that let you put cards into play. Search your library, put them into play, like the planar bridge. You can still activate that all day long. And obviously, you would think if we have enough mana to, play the Enduring Ideal, then we have enough mana to to fund a bridge, as it were. But there are, as I said, 1 of each color. Some of them a lot more powerful than others. This one is not bad. But it's definitely build around. You have to build around it when you build your deck. Just to get enchantments out there. Kataki War's Wage. Now, this is the pretty much the answer for the Mirrodin block, but it was too little too late. By this time, Mirrodin was already busted, and but in our format, we have, it's kind of hard to build an EDH deck without any artifacts. You have to sit down and intentionally do it. It doesn't happen. Oh, by the way, I don't have any artifacts. But Kataki's War's Wage has all artifacts have. If this would have been in Dominaria, Pendril would have been in the name somewhere, because you pay 1 to keep all your artifacts. So At a 2/1, it comes down pretty quick. Kiyomaro. Now, another cycle, well, this set's full of cycles, is they all had a legendary Morrow. Now, I've already talked about the story of the actual card Morrow, but each color got a legendary spirit that was a Morrow, and they're all first to do something. Kiyomaro is the first to stand at 5 mana. Its power and toughness are each equal number of cards in your hand. As long as you got 4 cards, he's got Vigilance. As long as you got 7 cards, you gain 7 life when he deals damage. So, I do actually have this one built, and it's mono white card draw. Yeah, pretty much that's it. That's about the only way I knew to build it and make it somewhat effective. Michiko Kanda. I believe this is the daughter of actual Kanda. She is a 4-mana 2/2 human advisory legend, and whenever a source an opponent controls deals damage to you, that player sacrifices a permanent. Now, that's a really good ability. It does encourage people not to deal damage to you, which, if you can pull that off, that's amazing. But that being said, it's not for each damage. If they deal 5, if a 5/5 hits you, you're still only they still only have to sack 1 permanent. If it was for each damage, I think she may be too broken. So I think it's kind of, it may cost 1 too much for what I like, but it's definitely playable. Runetail Kitsune Ascendant. Oh, so good. 2 colors and a white for a legendary Fox Monk. 2/2. Whenever you have 30 or more life, you flip it. Now, this is one of the oldest decks I have. It's way, way back there. I can't lock onto the number right now while I'm looking up here, but it comes down so early. Generally, turn 3, if you were lucky enough to get your Soul Ring on turn 1, you can do it on turn 2. Because we play in a 40 life format, it comes down and instantly flips into the Essence, which is a legendary enchantment to prevent all damage that would be dealt to creatures you control. And then you can have tons of fun with that because your creatures just can't take damage anymore. Cloudhoof Kieran, 5 mana 4/4 flyer for, of course, a legendary Kieran spirit. Whenever you play a spirit or arcane spell, you may put the top X cards of target player's library into their graveyard, where X is that spell's CMC. Now, I know while looking at these 3 sets, it looks like there's just a ton of support for Arcane and Spirits. Spirits more so than Arcane, because Arcane they have never revisited. If they ever revisit it by either supplementary products or going back to Kamigawa, even in a limited fashion, like I would like to see a set of commander decks. We've had something close, but like legends from specific planes. What do we get, 4 a year now instead of 5? So have like 4. You could either go with 4 like really dominant popular planes or 4 really unsung planes. What I would love to see is like a deck from Kamigawa, a deck from Ogrotha, a deck from Vryn, and a deck from, I don't know, Chandala, or I don't know, another. You know what I'm saying? Because we know all about Ravnica and Innistrad and Mirrodin. We know all about that. I would love to have like a commander deck of each just wholly in that world. I don't know. And if that is the case, if they ever do reprint more arcane spells, which is kind of what these decks need, because you can only jam in so many, like for Cloudhoof here, he's blue, mono blue, so there's only so many mono blue spirits and changelings that you can do. Now, if they release more changelings, that helps out like every tribe ever. So that's an option. Irios Soratami Ascendant. Now let's figure out why this card's banned. Because it is banned in our format. Whenever the force spell of a turn is played, you flip it, and it turns into a legendary enchantment, so the creature removal is kind of shut down. It's a little bit harder to remove, and you counter the first spell played by each opponent each turn. Now, there's another little card, Arcane Laboratory, and there's even a white version, Rule of Law, that says, each player can only play 1 spell per turn. And if this is your commander and you're guaranteed it on turn 2, I can see it. this may be that interaction there is probably the most unfun combo since Telepathic Alien Probe and, let's see, was it Telepathic Alien Probe and Static Warp Bowl? I'm not going to tell you what game that's from, but if you get the reference, good on you. Eternal Dominion is the blue epic spell. Now, this one I kind of like. Search target opponent's library for an artifact, creature, enchantment, or land, and put it into play under your control. So this scales up nicely with your opponents. The better their deck is, the better yours is. I have an Eternal Dominion deck built for EDH. What it is mainly focused on two things. Massing of mana, I mean artifacts, in any way I can get more mana on the board, that's what I'm going to do. And then all the rest of the deck is copy, like twin cast and I'm going to say quote unquote fork type abilities. I can't use fork because it's red, but I don't know. It might be blue red. I'm not sure. That might be a real thing that I did, was go two colors with it to get more of those copy effects. Because how it works is you can cast this, and while it is on the stack, respond to it by casting your twin cast and your fork and your reverberate and whatever. And what happens is 4 of these copies, say you copied it 3 times, 4 of them go off, and then every turn you get this trigger 4 times. Right? Which ideally the number that you're searching for is the number of the number of opponents in the game. So if you've got 3 opponents, you're going to want 3 copies of this to trigger every upkeep. Freed from the Real is one of those auras that just absolutely break stuff. Any creature that taps to produce an ability, and you can run Freed from the Real with it, will improve it. I mean, just a single blue mana, you get another activation out of it. Whether it's, I don't know, anything. I'm having trouble thinking of anything right now, but can you imagine this on a Kiki-Jiki or a Grenzo? Not Grenzo. The guy that taps to double your goblins. Krinko. Yeah. Yeah, it's really good. Ideas Unbound was a card that it took me personally a little while to wrap my head around. Because for 2 mana, it's sorcery speed. It is an arcane, so it helps that deck out. Draw 3 cards, and then at the end of turn, you discard 3 cards. Well, I use this in like super aggro because my goal was I'm going to draw 3 cards and I'm going to play them so I don't have a hand. I don't have to discard at the end of turn if I don't have a hand. Or, maybe I drew 2 lands and I was only able to play 1 and I played the other spell, so the only thing I'm discarding is 1 land. Well, fine. It does not see a lot of play in EDH, but it totally could for the Muldrotha Reanimator style decks, to where you're wanting to draw cards, you're wanting to discard cards. Yes, Muldrotha's 3 colors, and I get that double blue, but 2 pips is not that hard to get in a 3-color deck. It really isn't, with the amount of multicolored lands that we have. So it is something that I should probably consider running in my Muldrotha as well. Kaho the Minamo Historian. 2 generic and 2 blue for a 2/2 legendary human wizard. When he comes into play, search your library for up to 3 instants, exile them, shuffle. X tap, you may play a card with CMC X removed from the game with him without paying his mana cost. You're kind of paying the mana cost as part of the activation, so that's how you get around that. It doesn't really cheat the mana there. You're still paying for it, but this card lets you have access to it. Now, I do like the fact as a commander, of course we're mono blue, 3 instants. So it's, I don't know, the first idea that probably popped in every one of our minds is, you just put 3 counter spells underneath him and you're like, now here's the thing. Search your library for up to 3 instant cards and exile them, then shuffle. It doesn't say face down, so everybody can see what these instants are. It's public knowledge. So you can actually use that as a benefit. Now, if you do choose counter spells, make sure you do actual ones you're willing to cast. you don't want to put a Force of Will underneath this thing because you will still have to pay 5. Kami of the Crescent Moon. Now, I think I probably built this one a lot like everybody else did. It's the Let's Draw Cards deck. Everybody's going to draw. Cards for you, cards for you. Everybody gets cards. Tamishin the Mind Cage is a 7-mana legendary enchantment. All creatures get -X, -O, where X is the number of cards in your hand. So here, obviously this begs for a creature light deck, or maybe even creatureless outside of your commander. I can see this helping dramatically for things like, I need time to set up my game-winning combo, or my game-winning board state of some type. This will help you get there. Sakashima the Imposter has done ridiculous things price-wise lately. I have Sakashima built. She's 2 generic blue for a 3/1. Not that that matters. When Sakashima comes into play, you choose a creature. She comes into play as a copy of that creature, except still has the same name, still legendary, and gains 4 mana, bounce it. That way you can cast it again and choose a different target. I like the fact that you can copy your own legendary creatures and have them both live because she still keeps her name. It is just an outstanding card. And that bounce ability, being able to recast, is pretty good. Soramaru, First to Dream. This is the blue Maru. 6 mana, flying. Power touches each equal number of cards in your hand. Yeah, that's pretty well standard. 4 mana, return a land you control to draw a card. Now, drawing cards is cool. Spending 4 mana and returning a land you control, it kind of almost makes me think this was started out as a Moonfolk, But his power is going up by 2 when you do that, because the land's coming to your hand, the card you draw is going to your hand, so his power is going up by 2. But more than likely, we're just playing this in a I draw lots of cards deck anyway. And the beautiful part about the I draw lots of cards deck is, well, you have more options for more answers than probably anybody else at the table. Twincast. This was the set that gave it to us the very first time. I looked at it and I went, oh, it's a blue fork. Yeah, okay. But to be honest with you, this is probably where fork should have been anyway. Blue and red, to be enemy colors, share a lot of the same color pie space. And it's like for the past 25 years, they've been like, well, this goes here. No. A couple years later, it's like, no, it goes here. And a couple years later, they're like, well, maybe we had it right to begin with. But I like the fact that different things, that as time goes on, the color pie gets, adjusted, if you will. It still maintains the integrity and what it is, but I like the adjustments to it, Akuta, Born of Ash. 2 generic black for a 3/2 haste spirit legend. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have more cards in hand than each opponent, you may sack a swamp. If you do, return this from your graveyard to play. So, hey, you don't have to pay commander tax on him if you don't want to. You can let him go to the yard and then do it this way. But it only triggers during your upkeep. So, from whatever time it hit the yard till your upkeep, it's vulnerable. But really not so much, because if somebody Bajuka Bogs your library or your graveyard, then you can just put it back in the command zone. So there's little risk at that point. It is a 3-power hasting commander, so black is kind of fast for mana. Back in the day, we lived the dream with Swamp Dark Ritual Soul Ring, and we played a 4-drop on turn 1. That 4-drop back then was just Chazam. But, it could totally happen here, although the odds are way less in our format. Choice of Damnation is a 6-mana arcane sorcery. Target opponent chooses a number. You may have that player lose that much life. If you don't, that player sacrifices all but that many permanents. That sounds kind of confusing. Let's explore it. Okay, so this keeps. Okay, so the opponent chooses the number. And this creates a tension moment where the opponent doesn't want to go too low, but they don't want to go too high. Because they pick the number, and then you pick what happens. So let's say, okay, target opponent chooses a number, say they choose 4. We can have that player lose 4 life. If I don't, that player sacrifices all but 4 permanents. So that keeps them from, I mean, the number they choose is going to tell you how they feel about their hand and board state and situation in the game at that moment. You're going to see what's more important to them, the life or the permanence. I love the cards that create interesting tensions, that especially unique ones. So I kind of like Choice of Damnations. Maybe it's a little overcost at 6 mana, but like I said, big black mana is not hard to do. I mean, it's a lot of text. Death Denied. X black black. Now, I've got this one in here just because I've used it. Return X creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. That seems like a thing I want to be a part of. Raise Dead is obviously where this ability started at 1 mana for 1 creature. And this is an instant, and you get X. So at the end of the turn before you, you're just like, I'm going to get back these 3 guys. Infernal Kieran. The legendary Kieran was also a cycle. 2 generic black for a 3/3 flyer. Whenever you play a Spirit or Arcane, target player reveals her hand and discards all cards with that spell's converted mana cost. Here again, this is where I would love to find out, it may exist on EDH Rec, and I just not know how to find it, what the most popular converted mana cost of cards played in all decks on the Rec. I'm going to guess it's probably, I almost said the 2 to 5 range, but that's a big old range. Anyway, Kejimaro, the first to suffer. 3 generic black. Its power and toughness are each equal number of cards in your hand. That seems pretty standard so far for the Maros, but it's not. You can spend a black to sacrifice him. All creatures get -X, where X is the number of cards in your hand. So this is kind of its own kind of, I'm going to say, emergency board wipe. The minuses will kill indestructible things because, it just reduces the toughness, and as a state-based action, it's put into the yard. But anyway, we're also, voluntarily killing off our commander when we do that. That if we are taking advantage of the first line, where its power times equal number of cards in hand, then we probably don't want to sacrifice our 5/5, 6/6, whatever commander. But I can see it if you are building it as a commander damage win. It's a commander damage threat and removal spell all at the same time. So that's good call. Kuan the Ogre Ascendant. Triple black legendary Ogre Monk. At the end of turn, if 3 or more creatures were put into graveyards from play, flip this, and it becomes Kuan's Essence. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature. That condition of 3 or more creatures put into graveyards from plays is not hard to meet. 1 board wipe generally does that. However, you've got to find a way for, this guy to live through it. So, to where automatically in Garrick's Wake and Plague Wind effects come to mind, personal, one-sided Wrath. So, but that enchantment, if you can get it flipped, is a powerhouse. Now, it says each player, not each opponent, so you've got to sacrifice 2. But there's a good chance that we built in, cool sacrifice stuff in the deck. if this is our commander. Maga, the Traitor to Mortals. X black, black, black for a legendary human wizard. Comes into play with that many +1/+1 counters. And it comes into play, target player loses life equal to the number of counters on it. This is called a win condition. Absolutely. Maga is insane. There's no telling how many games this card has just won, because you built your deck and you go to and fro and back and forth, and then you're like, oh, so you're at 7? Bam, Maga, 7 you. And in our format, we have access to obscene amounts of black mana. And this can get, I mean, you can totally one-shot a player and then slide, as you cast it, you one-shot a player for, I don't know, if it's late game, and they're, you can one-shot somebody at, we're going to grab a number out of the air like 21. I'm on a 21 you, slide the boots on, 21 you. Yeah. Now, I get it, that is Magical Christmas Land, but it could happen, because if this is our commander, hey. Never-Ending Torment is the black epic spell. Costs 6 mana. Search target player's library for X cards, where X is the number of cards in your hand, and then exile them. Of course, then they shuffle. Now, this one actually ends up feeding itself, because since you can't play spells anymore, you're just going to mound up cards in hand. So odds are we're going to want something crazy like no max hand size, probably every version we can have in the deck, so that as the game progresses, we start exiling more and more cards. And, we get to surgical that junk. It's really... Pain's Reward. It's a 3-mana sorcery. You bid any amount of life. You bid. So we start the bidding. In turn order, each player may top the high bid. The bidding ends if the high bid stands. The high bidder loses life equal to the high bid and draws 4 cards. So, obviously, if I am casting this card, I'm casting Pain's Reward, I bid 0. And then we'll watch it go around the table. We will see who values cards more. Now, I'm betting, because people associate black and card draw with life. So, and the going rate that we're kind of willing to pay is a life per card. I don't know if that got started with Necro or Bargain or what, but somehow that's implanted in our mind, and it's implanted in their mind because they're still doing like signing bloods and things like that. Ambitions cost, and there's 1,000 of them. Oh, that may be exaggerated a little bit, but there's a bunch. Adamaro, First to Desire. This is the red Maro, and it's a little different. 3 mana, its power and toughness is equal to the number of cards in the hand of the opponent with the most cards, because red is not known to mound up cards in their hand. That's kind of their thing. They're not red doesn't have a grand master plan. The red's master plan is there is no master plan. Go, run, fast. So, and I get that. And this card kind of embodies that. The stronger an opponent is, the stronger it is. So, I like those choice cards that, let the opponent draw. And, of course, I am going to run all of the force card draw cards, like, the Mine and the Font and the whatever. Because, yeah, this is really big. And, maybe a slight Voltron package, maybe the double strike equipment or enchantments, just a little bit, anything to shave off, because ideally you want to get Adamaro at 7. That's pretty much what if this is your commander, you want their toughness to be at least 7, or their power to be at least 7, for the 3-hit, because that way they're in the 3-hit club. And if you get lucky enough and you've got somebody who's just, hoarding cards in hand, hey, you might could get up to that magical 11 and, be in the 2-hit range. Hey, what would be cool? Yeah, that would be cool. When I get all 5 of these done, to have like a legendary Maro Star Magic, with all 5 decks. Okay, Star Magic. Oh gosh, it's one of my favorite formats. Star Magic is a very unique win con. It takes 5 players. Each player plays a single color deck. I mean, I've done it with like shards or what did cons call the clans? I guess, but it works best with solid color decks, and everybody is playing a single solid color deck, and your win condition is when your 2 enemies get eliminated. Like if you'll look at on the back of the card, there is the actual color wheel, and each color, the 2 colors that are beside you are your friends, and the colors that are opposing you are your enemies. So you win when you eliminate 2 of those, and you have 2 friends. Now each one of your friends has a common enemy with you, but then they have a friend who is your enemy. So it's a great balance, and when somebody starts to pull ahead, your friends are now trying to save your enemy, because if you've done eliminated one of your enemies and all you have to do is eliminate the other one, they're going to try to save them so you don't win. Yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic. It is probably one of the better multiplayer formats I've done. It doesn't happen a lot because, let's face it, most people don't want to play single color decks. Somebody's getting stuck with white or red or whatever. Gaze of Adamaro. Now, 4 mana instant. Gaze deals damage equal to the number of cards in target player's hand to that player. Obviously, will go in that deck. This is what is that? The original version of this card was in Legends. It was Stormseeker. That was green. Then we got Sudden Impact. That's red. It costs 4. A little different configuration, but it still costs 4. A decent card in the everybody draws. Not bad. Hitotsugu's Second Right. I have spent the entire lifespan of this card calling it Headshot, because the idea was, obviously this was back in the day when they did not design cards for Commander. They were pretty much designing for Standard and Standard only. And they designed this card with a 20 life total format in mind, because the idea was you played Hitsugu and you tapped him and they went from 20 to 10, and then you had the second right to headshot them and finish them off. For our format, there's not a lot. There are a few cards like Soren Markov sets a player to 10. And that, combos very nicely, because if you don't have the Artifact Sphinx also does it. If you don't have a way to, is it 10 or 5 with that guy? I think it's 10. If you don't have a way to set them at 10, then you just got to get lucky and strategize, because you can't just plan on you and that opponent anymore. You've got a whole, 4+ people variance there, opportunities of stuff to happen that you have no control over, and if it just magically happens. Now, granted, that I would imagine that's a sweet feel, is to run Hitotsugu's Second Right and it just accidentally happened, and you're like, oh, you're at 10? See ya. Homura, Human Ascendant. This is a 6 mana 4/4 legendary human monk. It can't block, and when it's put into a graveyard from play, you return it to play flipped. And it turns into the legendary enchantment. Creatures you control get +2/+2, flying, and fire breathing. Yeah, your whole team gets that. The problem that I have experienced with giving your team fire breathing is that you have only so much mana. And because of that, you are, a little limited as to, yes, they all get +2/+2 and flying. That's awesome. There's a good chance we are just running this guy into battle, or we may be sacrificing it on purpose for whatever ability, just to get the enchantment, because I think if you play it, you want that final form. That's what you want. And to abuse that +2/+2 flying fire breathing is you would almost have to almost discount the fire breathing part, because let's face it, you're not going to dump 5 mana into every creature. You're going to dump 5 mana into the one that matters, into the one that gets blocked, or to the one that doesn't get blocked, or what have you. Izuka the Ruthless, 5 mana 3/3 legendary human samurai with Bushido 2. Hey. 3 mana, sacrifice a samurai. Ouch, we don't have that many samurai to sack. Samurai you can control, gain double strike. Okay, I'll sacrifice a samurai for that. Yeah, especially if it happens to be some no-name changeling that gives the rest of my team double strike. Nice. Jawari, the Earth of Flame, is a 5 mana 3/3 legendary spirit. X and a red. It deals X damage to target creature without flying. So it's going to personal earthquake a creature, just, and then it has the ability Channel. Channel appeared on a couple cards. Wasn't really. I have never cast anything for its channel cost. Never. But this one, I don't think I have this one in any deck. I might, because you can channel it to turn it from a creature into a earthquake. And if this is your commander, nowhere on there, oh yeah, it says discard. So you can't, if it's not in your hand, you can't discard. You can't discard it from the command zone. Dang it. It'd be cool if it worked that way, but it doesn't. I guess that would make it a little more powerful. But you know what? I don't think there's anything wrong with making obscure cards from Kamigawa a little more powerful. Skyfire Kieran, 4 mana 3/3 flying legendary Kieran spirit. I detect a theme. Whenever you play a spirit or arcane, you may gain control of target creature with that spell's converted mana cost until end of turn. So I believe there is enough. I don't know, we're mono red, and so you know what would be cool? Colorless arcane spells. Wizards, make that happen. Because really, they could make cards arcane. I mean, our game, the primary crux of our game is magic. Oh, duh, I know. That's the reason why we don't have weapons. That's the reason why we don't have guns, is because our weapons are magical spells in this fantasy universe or multiverse. So, but I get that because magic is our main weapon, it seems like more than one plane that we visited would have come up with arcane magic. You know what I'm saying? Maybe not evergreen, maybe deciduous. Thoughts of Ruin. Ooh, boy, this will get you slapped. 2 generic red sorcery. Each player sacrifices a land for each card in your hand. Now, they felt this was safe to play, safe to make in the color that's, not supposed to have a whole lot of cards in hand. But this is also the same color as Wheel of Fortune effects. So, if you can set up your board state with enough mana rocks or what have you, those are sacrifices. That has nothing to do with indestructible. So, it could definitely be a card. Arashi the Sky Asunder. Now, how the other one was Earthquake, this one is Hurricane. Except it just hits the creatures. It doesn't hit the players. It is a 5 mana 5/5 legendary spirit. X and a green to tap and deals X damage to target creature with flying. So you're just shooting stuff out of the sky. And of course you can channel it to deal to each creature with flying. Ayumi the Last Visitor. Now, this is a card. I'll be honest with you. When I was saving the images for this video, I knew the legendary Landwalk creature existed, but that's all I knew. I mean, I had never actually seen the card. And I saw the name and I'm like, what does that do at 5 mana? It's a 7/3 and it has a legendary Landwalk. Is this not everything we want? I mean, It's a 7 power commander for 5. Yeah, it's got 3 toughness. Don't care, we're playing green. We can fix that. We can work around that. But that's 7 power for 5 mana. And it has the line of text. If your opponent has a Gaia's Cradle, it's unblockable. If your opponent has a Serra Sanctum, it's unblockable. Or, many other popular legendary lands. Yeah. Because each legendary land they print that's playable in our format is going to make this card better. I don't even know that I own this card. I certainly never built it. It's probably on my to be acquired list, which I might pick up as soon as I finish this video because I really like that ability. Bounteous Kieran. For 7 mana, we get a 4/4 flying Kieran Spirit. This legendary. Whenever you play a Spirit Arcane spell, you may gain life equal to that spell's converted mana cost. Like we said, the overcosting, the perception is that this block is over. Excuse me. The perception is that this cards in this block are overcosted. But if you tack on gain life equal to the CMC to them, it's almost like they're not overcosted anymore. Now, granted, life gain is not a favorite strategy, but if it's literally just tacked on to spells you're already playing, although more than likely we made some deck building sacrifices to play spirits and arcane spells, so we kind of need that extra value just to make it viable. Dense Canopy is amazing. You want to talk about, okay, now we turn flying into a detriment. A generic and a green for an enchantment that says creatures with flying can't block creatures without flying. Flips the scales, man. Just completely flips the scales. Non-flying creatures at that point become superior. That's what it was meant to do. So, yeah, I like it. Endless Swarm is the green epic spell for 8 mana. It's a sorcery that puts a 1/1 green snake creature token into play for each card in your hand. Of course, it's epic. Therefore, this one feeds itself as well because you are going to keep mounting up cards in your hand because you can't cast them. And you're just going to get a bunch of snakes. Here again, you're going to want all of the no-max hand size cards in whatever deck that is. Now, is there a 2-color variant to where we would want both? No, because hold on. If we had a Veldakin Ore and we could play things as instant, we could cast one and respond to it by casting the second one. You want to talk about magical Christmas land, Evan. Having that much mana at your disposal is, setting up residence in magical Christmas land. I would like to change my address. Kashi Tribe Elite, a generic green for a 2/3 creature. It's a snake warrior. And we're going to want to run this in, some of those other decks from the previous block or the previous sets. Legendary snakes you control have Shroud. It's not bad. And whenever this whenever this deals combat damage to a creature, tap that creature. It doesn't untap next turn. So that's not nothing. We play it for that first line, let's face it, because there's so many legendary snakes. It is a warrior. So there's that. But this doesn't see a whole lot of Tazri play. It's mainly for those legendary snakes. If you're building one of those like 5 or 6, pick you up a elite. Mazumaro First to Live. For 6 mana, we get our green installment of the legendary Maro cycle. Its power and toughness is equal to twice the number of cards in your hand. Green gets that one. This is the last one. Because green is, as part of their color pie, they have access to the best creatures. The ones that are, the biggest for the mana cost. So I think this was the first one of the bunch that I built. Because green, while its card draw is mainly based around creatures, there are a lot of cards that just put lands into your hand and stuff like that, so I kind of went that route with it. Molting Skin has seen several iterations over the years. Broken Fall was, I think, the original one from Tempest. 2 generic and a green for an enchantment. You can return this to its owner's hand to regenerate target creature, which is pretty much the exact same thing that Broken Fall did, only Broken Fall had a really cool artwork of Gerard Compassion on it, and not a guy literally ripping off his face. Anyway, but it's decent for those Enchantress style, I want to draw a ton of cards decks. Reki, the History of Kamigawa. Now, Dana Roach has a Reki deck he speaks about often, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't built it, and he just did over the EDH Recast. I listen to them quite a bit. Every single episode they've ever done, I religiously listen to. It's a good podcast. They're generally about an hour long. I have an hour drive to work and back every day, so it's a thing that I do. And I encourage everyone else to give them a... And this week they did, because that podcast has a unique advantage that not a lot of other EDH podcasts have, is they have access to all of the records from EDH Rec. I'm proud to be associated with those guys. But they, like this week's was decks versus the stats. The decks that they play, and he talked about his Reki of History of Kamigawa deck, which was very enlightening. Now, Reki does kind of suffer from what the CCO boys call the Zada effect, because there's only so many cards you're going to want to put in here. So when I build Reki, it probably is not going to look a lot different than any other Reki deck, just because of the amount of... we don't have a whole lot of, variables that can differ. Sassy, that's Orochi Ascendant. That's I'm not going to try. Generic green. Reveal your hand. Oh, it's a legendary snake monk. So this can be your commander. Reveal your hand, : if you have 7 or more lands in your hand, flip this. Now, I am running cards like... oh, shoot, I went blank. No, Summer Bloom puts lands into play. Seek the Horizons puts the 3 lands into your hand. So I'm running an inordinate amount of forest, probably more so than any other deck. I want to say it's like 60 or 70, because I want that. By the time I cast this, I want to have seven lands, and I'm willing to miss land drops to do that. I will, if I've got the 3 mana, I'm not just going to run Sassy out there and hope to get the lands later. I'm going to want to have the lands. And it flips into, whenever a land you control is tapped for mana, add 1 mana of that type to your mana pool for each other land you control with the same name. Okay? This is a coat of arms for lands. Right? Forest. If you have 5 forests, they each tap for 5 mana. What? Mana becomes an insane... You are just so leveled up beyond everybody else's mana capability. And then the rest of your deck is things to abuse insane mana. Yeah, I've got the Degenerate Helix Pinnacle in there because if you happen to get the Helix Pinnacle, you can probably just cast it for 101 mana and win the game. But I think I've got make a whole bunch of token cards, like the Hatchery. It's been a while since I've done Sassy. It may need to get on the redo list. It might need to. Seed the Land. It's a 4-mana enchantment. When a land comes into play, its controller puts a 1/1 snake creature into play. Now, this is a pretty much a global landfall card. We had landfall abilities long before the ability existed, and I wish they would make landfall evergreen, because in non-Zendikar sets, they have made cards since Zendikar. They've been like, hey, when a land comes into play, do this. And you're like, oh, why didn't you call that landfall? And I understand that they want landfall to be indicative of Zendikar. Someday we'll actually go back to Zendikar. We've never been back We went there one time, and then when they said we went back in Battle for Zendikar, we went back to Rise of the Eldrazi. We didn't go back to Zendikar, so maybe Nissa's going to help that cause. Maybe she dipped out and she's going to fix it all, and we're going to go back and we're going to have, what is it, maps, chaps, and traps? Yeah, maybe so. Seki Seasons Guide is a whopping 8 mana legendary spirit. 5 green, green, green. It comes into play with 8 1/1 counters on it, though, so it's an 8/8. But if damage would be dealt to it, prevent that damage and remove that many counters from it. And put that many spirit tokens into play. They're colorless. You can sacrifice 8 spirits to return this from the yard to play. Now, it has to be damaged because it has to be damaged to take the counter off and make the token, because if you could just take the counter off and make the token, you could do some looping shenanigans. So, it's got to take the damage. Now, obviously, this is going to be in a crazy, +1/+1 counter deck. But now, here's the thing. Somebody Doomblades it, you get nothing. Because damage wasn't dealt to it, so. Hey, but you could totally play like all the fight cards to where, yeah, that's the ticket. You play Seki, and you just play all the fight cards and have Seki fight just anything that you can. And then when it finally dies, you tap your 8 spirits, bring it back, and then we're fighting again. It's Fight Club. I still got to watch that movie at some point. I never have. Hell, I think I own the movie. Stampeding Cerro is a functional reprint of Stampeding Wildebeest, although this is a... no, they're both beast. 2 generic green-green for a 5/4 trample, and at the beginning of your upkeep, return a green creature you control to its owner's hand. Now, in the beginning, when they printed... they wanted a Kamigawa version of the Stampeding Wildebeest. I'm not exactly certain why they just didn't use Stampeding Wildebeest, but I like that they made this card because it gives us 2 copies of it now. And that drawback is a positive. Of course, y'all know me. I like to think that every single card is playable, and there's no such thing as a drawback on a Magic card. You can find the right deck to make that minus into a plus. You know, what is that? Addition by subtraction or subtraction by addition, whatever. Like, I don't know, the first thing that pops into my mind is Eternal Witness. Wouldn't it be cool to return that Eternal Witness to your hand every turn? Or wouldn't it be cool to, have that Acidic Slime pop back in your hand? Or the Wall of Blossoms that drew you a card? Or, you see where I'm going. That's why I tend to use it. And it's a 5/4 trample that, for 4 mana. It's not bad. Iname as 1. Now, this is the gold version of the 2 Inames from the last set. It is a whopping 12 mana, 8 generic black, green for an 8/8 legendary spirit. Yeah. Now, it comes into play if you played it from your hand. You may search your library for a spirit and put it into play. And if this is put into a graveyard from play, you may exile it. If you do, return spirit from your graveyard to play. This is going to be exceedingly difficult for me to do as a commander. Number 1, it's 12 mana. Oh my. Now, well, that was hard to keep edited. And then the first ability doesn't even matter because you have to play it from your hand. So really, we would only be playing this as our commander for the second ability. I know I'm focusing a lot on these legends that nobody is probably ever going to build decks out of, but I am, because my goal, my mission is to build every single legendary creature as it's the commander of its own deck. And I keep those, and they're all ready to play, and, so I'm going to build it. So when I see one of these that I haven't built, I'm like, trying to wrap my mind around exactly how I would build it. We have Ashes of the Fallen. For 2 generic mana, we get an artifact. Comes into play, you choose a creature type. Each creature card in your yard has the chosen creature type in addition to its others. So that's a real thing. There are a lot of, like when you want to bring those spirits back from the yard, Ashes of the Fallen can make everything in your yard a spirit. So that's a good thing where you don't have to corner case yourself into, well, I have to run only spirits. And, you can actually run something that's, beneficial to the deck that's non-spirit. Blood Clock. For 4 mana, we get an artifact that says at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player returns a permanent he or she controls to its owner's hand unless they pay 2 life. Now, I use this just for the simple fact of I get a free bounce of my stuff. Here again, see Eternal Witness or Wood Elves or whatever. Maybe Maga. Because we just bring Maga back and then one-shot somebody else with all that big black mana. And the upside is your opponents have probably not built their deck in a way that's going to take advantage of this. Yeah, I mean, they're going to have the corner case scenario. Somebody else is going to have an Eternal Witness or Acidic Slime or whatever that they're going to get some value out of, especially if it's a Acidic Slime. But there's a good chance you're going to kill that before you play the clock anyway, since it can actually kill the clock. If you're wanting to abuse the clock, you're going to, not play it in those situations. Manriki Gusari. First off, that is a fun card name to say, Manriki Gusari. I love that. It just rolls off the tongue. Anyway, it's a 2-mana equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+2 and has tap destroy target equipment. Yeah, costs 2 to cast, 1 to equip. But this is pretty much it for equipment. Well, equipment destruction that's not, destroy target artifact or whatever. It hasn't really taken off as much because it's so narrow, and we would rather run destroy target artifact cards because, well, that hits every artifact, including equipment. This doesn't hit the planar bridge. This doesn't hit the whatever if it's not an equipment. Now, there's that one card that turns all artifacts into equipments. I guess that would be one of those ha-ha combos. Yeah, it's not a game-winning combo. It's a flavor combo, and you're like, hey, your blood clock's not equipment. Destroy it. Oh. Sure, I'll try. Naginata. Oh, Naginata. Yeah, I probably got that wrong. Evidently, that's Kamigawan for sword with really long handle. 1 generic mana for an equipment. It can be attached only to a creature with 3 or more power. Now, the odds are our general is going to be 3 or more. Equipped creature has +3, and trample equipped 2. This is an equipment that hold on. It gives +3 power and trample. 1 to cast, 2 to equip. In the right deck, it has no drawback. That first line doesn't even matter. Right? Pithing Needle. It is my belief that Pithing Needle should be in every core set till the end of time. It is a great safety valve in case things go haywire. I don't know, maybe every other one, because we could use formats that doesn't have it, I guess. Yeah, that's probably right. Maybe every core set's probably a little much. I guess the only card that really has to be in every core set is basic. Anyway, as it comes into play, you name a card. What scares you? What's going to mess your game up? Activated abilities of the name card can't be played unless they're mana abilities. Now, this is honestly pretty narrow. Now, granted, we have the foreknowledge of one card in everybody's deck, and that's their commander. And if their commander has an activated ability that does, ridiculous things, I can't tell you how many times somebody's looked across at me, looked at my commander, and turned one Pithing Needle Memnarch. And you know what? I kind of asked for that when I choose Memnarch as my commander. but it happens. Now we're into the legendary lands. Like Mikikoro, the center of the sea, taps for colorless, and then 2 and tap, each player draws a card. There's another card that does that in later sets. Mirror the Moaning Well. Legendary land taps for a colorless now. 3 mana and tap, sack a creature, you gain life equal to the creature's toughness. This is a direct riff off of Diamond Valley, and of course that enchantment that turns any land into Diamond Valley. Only here you've got to pay 3 mana for it. If I'm not mistaken, I think that enchantment actually costs 3, so it's more or less the same card. Life Gain is your jam, or even if it's not your jam and it's just incidental, if you've got a creature that's going to die, then sure, sack it and gain some life off of it. Obero, the Palace in the Clouds. It's a legendary land, taps for a blue. 1 mana, return this to its owner's hand. That in and of itself is more useful than you realize. There are, I mentioned last set that I have a blue landfall deck. You can dependably, because you can tap this for the mana that it needs to activate it. So if you catch yourself in, I need a land drop and I don't have a land, you can make it happen right here. Especially if you are in like blue-green or, because green, let's face it, green is the mother of all landfall colors. It is. Everything on Zendikar leaned green, just like everything on Innistrad leaned black. So, Tomb of the Urami? Sure, why not? It's a legendary land. Taps to add a black to your mana pool and deals 1 damage to you if you don't control an ogre. So, we gotta have ogres apparently. 4 mana and tap. Sack all lands you control. Put a legendary 5/5 black demon spirit token named Urami into play. Here again, Wizards, this is one of those tokens that you have never made. It does not exist. It could totally be an uncommon or maybe even a rare in this hypothetical set that I'm continuing to pitch to y'all about a set of legendary or of tokens, just tokens. And it could be made cheap. It wouldn't have to be booster price, but think about it. All of you, everybody watching that's not employed by Wizards R&D, think about it. You could have an option. It wouldn't have to be a limited print run. They could just print to demand. That way there's no extra left over and they don't have any loss. Of a set, a booster pack of 15 cards of all tokens. There are a crazy amount of tokens that exist out there, that cards exist to make the tokens, but they don't actually have the tokens. And while that may not be enough to make a set, it wouldn't have to be a whole, 250 card set. You could do 100, 150 cards, have mythics, rares, uncommons, and commons, and more importantly, have foils. Right? A foil. And you could, I know foils cost more to make, but anyway, that's enough about that. Evidently, that's enough about the whole thing. That's what I've got for Saviors of Kamigawa. I do appreciate y'all watching. Y'all let me know what you think, and we will see y'all tomorrow.